So let's talk about chapter 14 in our book, It Starts with Food. This is all on vegetables and fruits. Now, I like this because I like to know why I should have something. Like, don't just tell me have fruits and vegetables, especially if I don't like those vegetables. So this is helpful to understand what they do for our body, some that we should have over others, some in small supply, some in a lot, right? It's just the more we know, the better choices that we can make. And we want to incorporate a variety of all of these. So we will jump right into it. Okay, talking about carbs, right? Vegetables and fruits are carbs. And most people feel their best with enough carbohydrates in their diets to support brain function and activity levels. So choosing your vegetables as your primary source of carbs is a great way to get all the energy you need in a micronutrient dense package. So keep in mind, when we talk about carbs, there's a variety of carbs, right? From fruits to grains, oats, flour, right? That then can turn into either breads, cupcakes, cookies, donuts. We've got sugar, we've got treats, we've got Snickers bars. So we've got healthy carbs, nutrient dense carbs like fruits and vegetables and healthy grains. And then we've got junk food, less nutrient dense food, right? Whatever we want to say the rest of it is, but it's what tastes the best. Sometimes I just want a Snickers bar, right? But I realize it's more for the taste buds and emotional support. There's no nutrient value to it. It just eats up my calories for the day, right? So I do feel like there's a little bit of balance of all, but we need to talk about the carbs that we should have the majority of. We've already discussed grains. So this is going to be on vegetables and fruits and why we should have them. So they said the majority of your carbohydrates should be veggies. And you'll hear these sometimes separated carbs, like they'll say on your plate, have fats, have protein, have carbs, have veggies. People will say, but aren't veggies carbs? Yes, but we keep them a little bit separate because veggies have so much fiber in them and it's how they're processed and digested in our system. So it's a little bit different. We talked about that in the last book that we read, all about glucose revolution, on how that is digested through our system. So we're gonna dive into vegetables. Vegetables are distinctly anti-inflammatory, which is a big deal. One of the number one reasons you want them in your diet. That's right, a diet rich in vegetables can actually help you battle our old arch nemesis, which is systemic inflammation, and reduce your risk for lifestyle-related disorders, stroke, coronary heart disease, and certain types of cancer and autoimmune diseases. Vegetables and fruit, which we'll get to in a minute, are a rich source of many nutrients and active compounds. Their benefits can't be explained by a single component, like their vitamin C or fiber content. However, their anti-inflammatory properties are often attributed to the fact that vegetables provide the richest source of antioxidants, which prevent or reverse damage caused by excess free radicals. So how do free radicals balance? How does our free radical balance get unbalanced, right? How do we get it to a point to where it's unbalanced? Some free radical production is instigated by external sources like pollution, smoking, radiation, and exposure to sunlight. Others can be created from our food, particularly when we consume certain types of fats. Remember the seed oils chapter? Free radicals are also normal metabolic byproducts. They're produced when our immune system is fired up, like when we get an infection or fight off a cold, when we eat too much or are doing strenuous exercise. Remember, an overabundance of free radicals in the body can damage cells and your DNA and are profoundly inflammatory. But we have a natural way of keeping our free radicals in balance, which are antioxidants. These substances both prevent free radicals from pinballing around in the body, damaging our healthy cells, and after the free radicals have come and gone, repair the damage they've done in our bodies. So when we have antioxidants, however, these perform these duties, they sacrifice themselves in the process. So even though the body produces its own antioxidants, we must continue to replenish our antioxidant stores through the food that we eat, especially if there are variables like illness, pollution, an aggressive exercise routine, or a less than healthy diet. Then keep pumping more free radicals into our system. So vegetables and fruits have the highest natural concentration of antioxidants, things you've heard of like vitamin C, vitamin E, and beta-carotene. So it makes sense that a diet rich in those food groups would help us fight free radicals and reduce systemic inflammation. So, people always say eat your veggies, and I'm like, why? Some of those I don't like, but these are the reasons why we need to have them. Remember, food is complex and vegetables aren't just antioxidants. You cannot attribute the benefits gained from eating certain foods to one particular nutrient, even if the nutrient is kind of a big deal. People don't eat nutrients, they eat the food. And like all real food, vegetables aren't just antioxidants, but an assortment of vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, fiber, and compounds that we have yet to even identify. Never mind figure out how they work in our bodies. But the good news is you don't need to understand the complexity of your veggies to reap the benefits of eating them. So let's talk about ones we should eat. Eat a wide variety of vegetables to ensure a wide range of micronutrients, right? Because every single one is going to give us there's some crossover, but they're going to give us different nutrients. And those micronutrients are important because at a cellular level, everything in your body operates and does something. And it needs to have these vitamins to be able to run efficiently. Okay, they gave us a list of top 20, the ones they recommend that you keep in your regular rotation. I'm going to read them, but you can't read them because they're backwards. But that's the chart that they give, and it's on page 155. They say eat in your rotation asparagus, beets, bell peppers, bok choy, broccoli or broccolini, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, carrots, cauliflower, greens, which are beet, collard, mustard, or turnip, kale, lettuce, onions, leeks and garlic, turnip, spinach, sweet potato, Swiss chard, tomato, watercress, winter squashes, and zucchini or summer squash. So those are the ones that they say have the most highest nutrient dense lineup when you compare them against other certain vegetables. So try to have, a majority of those throughout your week and just rotate through. I'll buy like 2 or 3 at a time, and then for lunch one day I'll have one, the next day I'll have another. I always make sure to have a different veggie with my lunch and then my dinner. And so I try to rotate as best as I can through those. Okay, so we'll point out some things that you might normally spot in the produce section that aren't on our good food list. Corn is botanically a grain, while green peas and lima beans are seeds of legumes, so these vegetables are not included on our general recommendations. You will find green beans, snow peas, and sugar snap peas on our shopping list despite the fact that they are botanically legumes. But let us explain. Potentially disruptive compounds are found in the seeds of legumes, but green beans, snow peas, and sugar snap peas are an immature seed wrapped in a big green plant pod. Since what you're eating is mostly pod, not the seed, we don't think these 3 legumes have the same issues as the others. Besides, if green beans are the worst thing that you're eating, you're doing okay. So when we talk about the benefit to these foods, that's what they're bringing up, that because they're mostly eating the pod and not the seed, these foods, those are okay also. Again, remember all this is just like a good, better, best, right? It's just getting a good understanding of, if I have to make a choice for vegetable, which one do you suggest to get the most nutrients from it? So if you're one of those clients I talk to that's like, I don't like vegetables, I don't want to eat them, or if it's a simple matter with your kids, my teenagers that are like, nope, I don't want them either. Let's talk about, they actually cover that. They say, we say nicely, we don't really care. See, it doesn't matter if you don't like vegetables because we're all grown-ups, and sometimes grown-ups have to do things they don't like, right? And they're being funny with this. Like mow the lawn or pay the bills or eat vegetables. If there's a way to be optimally healthy without vegetables, we would tell you, really, but there isn't. So now we've got to figure out how do we get a way to get them on our plates. Most aversion to vegetables is a result of 3 factors. 1, you've been eating so many sugary, salty, fatty processed foods that you simply can't appreciate the natural flavors of fresh vegetables. But the good news is that you're not eating that stuff anymore, right? Because the whole point of this book is to try to eliminate, which we'll get into the challenge, some of these sugary things, which will then allow your body to get used to something like a broccoli or even a pea, right? That doesn't have as much flavor when we're used to such a flavorful, sugary item. 2, most folks are stuck in a major vegetable rut, relying on just a very few familiar choices and avoiding everything else. Do you guys do that, where you like pick the same 2 vegetables over and over? So it's time to get out on a limb and try something new. Visit your local farmer's market and ask the farmers what they like to do with kale or leeks. Commit to trying 1 new vegetable a week. Ensuring you can, there's seasonal ones you can try depending on the time of the season. They're delicious and fresh flavors. They say step out of your comfort zone and try something new. 3rd reason you may not like veggies is many of us don't like certain vegetables because of the way they were served to us as a kid. No offense to our parents, but they didn't always go out of their way to make our vegetables delicious and exciting. So give your greens another chance. Try different cooking techniques. Experiment with herbs and spices, or find a new recipe that features the vegetable. You can douse them in a whole bunch of stuff and flavors and seasoning and add cheese to it. There's lots of ways to make them a little bit better. That's what they say. We don't really care how you purchase and prepare your veggies, fresh, frozen, cooked, or raw, only that you're eating them. But we suggest that you make raw fermented vegetables like sauerkraut and kimchi a priority. So sauerkraut and kimchi are our priority. I've had sauerkraut, don't really love it. It's one of those things where I read this and I was like, dang, I'm gonna have to try this. I never had kimchi. And because they provide a rich source of nutrition and digestion enhancing enzymes. Their fermentation process also provides natural probiotics, helping the intestinal tract maintain a healthy balance of bacteria by increasing what they call the good guys, right? The good bacteria. And we recommend including these fermented veggies in your diet a few times a week. We're going to talk about probiotics in another chapter. So that's it for vegetables, right? So they give us a couple suggestions, tell us the properties that it does. Hopefully the encouragement, right? The homework is try a new one. So the last half is talking about fruit. The next category of food we think makes you more healthy is fruit. The positive attributes of fruit, another nutrient-dense source of carbohydrates, are remarkably similar to those of vegetables with just a few special caveats. First, the pluses. So like vegetables, fruits are a carbohydrate source loaded with vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, and fiber. In addition, diets rich in fruit and compounds found in fruit like vitamin C have been associated with a reduced risk of systemic inflammation and related conditions and diseases. Fruit is a real food, a complex made up of healthy promoting substances. In addition, fruit provides your taste buds with natural sweetness in a much healthier and nutrient-packed form than the supernormal sweetness of candy, cookies, or cake. We have one important piece of advice in this section. Don't let fruits push vegetables off your plate because they're more fun to eat. I wouldn't say fun, but they definitely taste a lot better. While fruits are certainly nutrient dense and yummy, they are not nutritious as vegetables. In addition, if you don't particularly like fruit, you don't have to eat any. We don't know a single micronutrient found in fruit that you can't also find in a vegetable. So translation, vegetables are mandatory and fruit is optional. So rarely do I find someone that doesn't like fruit, especially berries, which are some of the best. But if you don't, everything that you need is also found in vegetables. Much as with vegetables, we encourage you to eat a wide variety of fruits, especially when they're in season. And their top 10 are apricots, blackberries, blueberries, cherries, grapefruit, kiwi, melon, plum, strawberries, and raspberries. So if you're going to choose some, those are the ones to go through. When I talk to clients, a lot of times they'll say, well, I just have apples or I just have bananas. And we have to look at how our body breaks down the sugar, right? Where they fall on the glycemic index. There's a lot to look at certain fruits. So we'll talk a little bit about this. So that list though are the best, most nutrient-packed fruits if you're going to have them. Berries are the main fruit that I eat. They talk a little bit about grow organic sometimes. So it's leaving it up to your choice. You don't have to buy organic produce, but we do think there are major benefits to going organic. They're obviously produced without the use of synthetic pesticides, herbicides, and chemical fertilizers. However, it's not always essential that you purchase organic produce. Shop smart. You can effectively minimize your exposure to toxins even if you're not buying organic. Then they give a website with Environmental Working Group issues. I haven't heard of that, but the Environmental Working Group issues an annual shopper's guide to pesticides and produce, which talks about like the dirtiest, most contaminated with pesticide, and then also the cleanest, which is the least contaminated produce items. If you're on a tight budget, purchase organic for the dirtiest of the dirty and conventional for the rest. Because it is expensive. Every time I go in there, I'm like, okay, what doesn't hurt? Then I look at the price difference for how many I need for as big a family as I have, and I was like, no, I'll pass. But then I understand the thought of it. So just like she said, look at this list and find the foods that seem to be the dirtiest. Maybe if you're going to splurge on those. The website for that is www.ewg.org/food news. And that's on page 159. So if this approach seems too complicated, follow this general rule of thumb. If an item has, so this is if you don't want to buy organic. If the item of produce has an inedible skin, or you're going to peel it before you eat it, it's less important to buy organic. If you can't peel it, like lettuce or grapes, consider spending money on organic. So an apple, you can peel the outside of the apple if you want. A banana, you peel the outside of the banana. An orange, you peel the outside of the orange, right? So if you want to save money, you don't need to go organic on those. But something that they said, like lettuce, right, or grapes, we're not going to peel anything off that. That would be where you would want to buy organic. Then they also say that, keep in mind, not every farmer goes through the rigorous and expensive process of earning a certified organic designation. Many smaller farming operations are dedicated to organic farming practices, but can't market their products as certified organic. When shopping at a farmer's market or local health food store, don't hesitate to ask how the food was grown. Labels that clearly state pesticide-free or herbicide-free are another indication that the produce was grown with environmental and health factors in mind. So if it doesn't say organic, but it does say that, that's another good choice. So let's talk about how, we're almost done. Let's talk about how sweet it is. Like all food, fruit is a complex combination of vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, fiber, and many other compounds that scientists have yet even to identify. Fruit also contains natural sugars, which are our glucose and our fructose, and starches in various proportions and amounts. As fruit ripens, the starch in the fleshy part of it is converted to sugar, which makes it taste even sweeter. Fructose is the sweetest of all naturally occurring carbohydrates, almost twice as sweet as sucrose. You consume fructose in a variety of sources, which is like table sugar, which is sucrose, honey, fruits, some vegetables, and in processed foods and drinks sweetened with high fructose corn syrup, like soda. Fructose is different from other simple sugars in the way it's processed in the body. So virtually every cell in the body can use glucose for energy, but after being absorbed from your small intestine, most fructose is sent straight to the liver, where it is metabolized and either stored as energy, right, your liver glycogen, or converted into triglycerides, which is fat, and dumped into the bloodstream. So glucose can be used by everything, but fructose, right, we've got to look at as a little bit different. It is, after being absorbed from the small intestine, most fructose is sent straight to the liver, where metabolized, and it can either be stored as energy, which is a good thing, right, liver glycogen, or converted into triglycerides, which is fat, and then dumped into the bloodstream. Side note, want to know what else is processed by the liver and when overconsumed promotes liver damage, accumulation of fat, and other metabolic consequences? Alcohol. That's right, ethanol and alcohol is metabolized through the liver using pathways similar to those used by fructose, which mean that those strawberry daiquiris are putting even more of a burden on your liver than you might have imagined. The effects of a diet too high in fructose are decidedly not good and may include liver damage, inflammation, atherosclerosis, free radical damage, and an increased risk of diabetes, high blood pressure, kidney disease, and obesity. In fact, many studies show that diets high in fructose play a key role in metabolic syndrome. But let's be clear, eating a few servings of fruit every day, especially with an otherwise healthy diet, is not going to create those conditions. Nobody ever became metabolically deranged from eating fruit. The trouble comes when folks consume more fructose from processed foods than they could ever get from natural sources. Most fructose in the American diet doesn't come from fresh fruit, but from the high fructose corn syrup, HFCS, or sucrose, a form of sugar that is 50% fructose, found in high concentration in soda and fruit-flavored drinks. As one example, a 21-ounce soda contains about 36 grams of fructose. That's the equivalent of eating 5 bananas, 9 cups of strawberries, or 90 cherries. Combine our soda and processed beverage intake with our overconsumption of processed foods, which a lot are also sweetened with that, and you've got a recipe for massive intake of fructose, the likes of which you could never consume from real food. So the takeaway, you will not create metabolic issues by eating fresh fruit as part of your healthy diet. You would have to eat a huge amount. Just because fruit tastes sweet doesn't mean it's an unhealthy choice, and just because diets high in fructose cause problems doesn't mean that you should abstain from eating fruit. Remember, just as whole grains are not just fiber, fruit isn't just fructose. The naturally occurring sugars found in fruit are wrapped in nutrient-dense package, unlike the fructose you'll find in a soft drink or breakfast pastry. So it is the sugar, even though you're getting sugar, right? It's nice because it's wrapped around all the nutrients that you're getting from that area. Okay, I want to talk about high fructose corn syrup for just a second. So, or HFCS, is the most common sweetener in processed foods and beverages, in a large part because of how cheap it is to produce. So it's one of those things where the whole point of this is to know what you're eating, right? Because I joke that we tend to think of our stomach as like a garbage disposal, and it just goes through us, especially if things taste good. But every single thing, how many times do I say this, right, that you eat or drink does something to your body. And I'm not just saying making you overweight, right, by adding fat cells. I don't care about that piece. I care about your health and what it's doing to your health. And so we have to look at labels, right? What kind of sugars are in them? What do those sugars do to me? You probably expect us to say that this high fructose corn syrup is the devil, which we don't think is any worse than any other form of added sweetener, right? Sweeteners are sweeteners. There's not one that's worse. Why? Because they all make you less healthy. Doesn't matter if it comes from corn, beets, cane, or a tree. From a psychological perspective, sugar is sugar is sugar. Of course, not everyone agrees with this perspective. Some studies do show that consuming HFCS leads to significantly more weight gain and higher triglycerides than consuming table sugar. However, we will set the record straight on one thing. HFCS may start out as corn. Even the US FDA says that HFCS is not a natural sugar, but they are. So sugar is sugar, especially if you're looking at artificial sweeteners. it's important, like, because this is what I've talked about before with my gut issues. There's different things that sugar versus artificial sweeteners can do for your gut. And both can wreak havoc, because I steered away from like a full Dr. Pepper because of the sugar content and high fructose corn syrup, and I went to the diet. Well, the artificial sweeteners killed my gut, and now I'm repairing that. So sugar is just sugar, right? So if you want to have a soda, have a single soda, but try not to have a ton of soda. Be aware of what you're consuming and how often, because if everything you're having throughout the day on the label has some form of artificial sweetener, you're like, hey, artificial sweeteners, but it doesn't have the full sugar. Artificial sweeteners still aren't good for your body. It's still sugar. So just be aware of how much sugar total in the day, even if it's artificial, that you're consuming, because they still have an impact on our body. There's one potential issue with fruit consumption. So because of the natural sweetness of fruit, especially in fruit juice and dried fruit, which concentrate the sugar, fruit may promote an unhealthy psychological response, especially in folks still battling their sugar dragons. We've seen many people use fruit to prop up their sugar cravings, telling themselves it's okay because fruit is natural and healthy. So, scenario that looks like this. It's 3 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, you're at work and you're hungry, cranky, and tired. I always want to take a nap around 3. You're normally reach for a Snickers bar, a muffin, or some Oreos right about now, but you're trying to eat healthier, so you know that these are poor choices, so instead you eat a dried fruit and a nut bar. There is one problem with the situation. Your brain doesn't know the difference. As you learn in chapter 4, your brain doesn't immediately differentiate between healthy sugars like a dried fruit and less healthy sugars like a Snickers. The only thing your brain knows is, I craved sugar and I got sugar. That's right, the message you just sent to your brain is, I craved, I satisfied that craving, and I feel better now. So sound familiar? This is the same unhealthy pattern we described in the situation with the cookie from the downtown bakery, except this time your sugar of choice is natural and healthy, so you don't even realize you're a slave to the same unhealthy habit. We'll warn you about this up front, and in later chapters detail our recommendations for when and how to include fruit in your diet in a way that feels healthy and satisfying. To touch on that, the brain, right, the gut, when you've got a bad amount of bacteria, the gut craves sugar. That's what feeds it, right? Back when we get bacteria issues. The brain, right? You've all had sugar addictions where it's like, I'm craving something, but I'm not even really hungry. Why do I want that? I just had one. Why do I have another one? And it's annoying. It's almost controlling, right? And so their point is, yes, when you're looking at a good, better, best, is the orange piece of fruit, right? Is an orange and apple better than a Snickers bar? Well, yes, because you get the nutrients from the fruit. I get that. But if you're looking at it not from a nutrient perspective, but a perspective of having sugar, period, because they both break down to sugar, your brain is still getting that craving of, I want sugar, and you're thinking, okay, well, I'm gonna have an orange instead of a Snickers, and then I'm gonna correct that habit of my brain not wanting sugar, because it's the healthier one. Well, it isn't that your brain wants the Snickers, right? That it's telling you have a Snickers. It's just saying, give me sugar. So even if we replace that with the fruit or a nut bar, it's still sugar, so we're still feeding that same addiction. So one final word of advice. Skip the juice even if you can make it yourself. First, liquid calories aren't as satisfying as real food, and as you've learned, less satiety equals eating more, right? Because you drink it and you're like, I'm still hungry, so then you eat more. Second, when you juice fruit, you remove all of the fiber, which would normally slow the absorption of the sugar in the whole fruit. You want the fiber because it slows that absorption. More sugar in your bloodstream faster is not a good thing when you're still struggling with leptin and insulin resistance. Finally, many of the naturally occurring nutrients are lost during processing, pasteurization, and storage. Manufacturers compensate for this by adding nutrients back to the juice after the fact, but eating vitamin-enriched foods does not provide the same benefits as eating the whole unprocessed food. Just eat the fruit. So sometimes we feel healthy because we're having a fruit juice, right? Even if it's made from home, keep in mind you're missing the most valuable piece, which is the fiber. So now you're just having sugar. That's why you'll see like orange juice. People will tell me, oh, I'm having some sort of bread and an orange juice for breakfast. And yes, that's better than having a soda for breakfast, but there's still sugar in it. And you've removed it by eliminating the fiber. And so it's really just a sugar drink. So just eat the piece of fruit and not necessarily in the juice form. Because again, our whole point of this is just to learn how things are processed, what is the better way to eat them, and then you get to decide, right? You decide how many glasses of orange juice do I want to have versus real fruit, versus a Snickers bar, versus veggies versus fruits, right? Serving sizes. It's all about creating a healthy mindset and relationship with food and understanding what we're eating and why we're eating so that we feel our very best.